of New York School of Public Health as an analyst, and I help to manage the Aiming Center on behalf of FICOR. And I'll be presenting with Kayla De La Haye, who is a co-PI of Aiming. So to get us started, we're here to discuss the funding opportunity for NIH's Nutrition for Precision Health Consortium that is being administered by the Aiming Center. Information about Aiming, the RFA, and NPH can be found at the website at the top left of this slide. So this RFA calls for research projects that develop and utilize artificial intelligence and other computer-aided approaches to facilitate precision nutrition. But first, what is precision nutrition? Precision nutrition is an emerging field that aims to provide targeted dietary and nutritional recommendations for individuals with different characteristics and circumstances in order to prevent and treat diseases, but also to improve overall health and well-being. And on this slide are links to a couple of articles where FICOR, led by Bruce Wiley, has written about the need for precision nutrition, including different research gaps and opportunities that exist. So this article in MedPage Today covered how AI and other computer-aided approaches can transform precision nutrition by elucidating the complex factors and processes between an individual's genetics, biology, behavior, social context, and environment, and also their short and longer term nutritional health outcomes. And the goal ultimately of precision nutrition is to generate diets and nutrition recommendations that better fit individuals and their particular situations, which ultimately requires a systems approach in order to account for all of the complex systems that are involved that affect nutrition and then link nutrition with health. So to back up a little bit, Aiming is the AI Center for the NPH Consortium. And the vision of Aiming really that guides all of our work is to implement computational and data science approaches and tools to advance nutrition for precision health in a way that would account for all of the complex systems involved. And our Aiming team members, two of which are on the call, Kayla and myself, and I believe Alexis, come from a wide range of backgrounds and across many different disciplines. And we're representing leading institutions, including CUNY, USC, Stevens Institute of Technology, and Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. To go a little bit deeper into the Nutrition for Precision Health Consortium that's funded by the NIH, you can find this on the NIH website as well. But the NPH's goal really is to develop algorithms that predict individual responses to food and dietary patterns. And more specifically, the objectives of the NPH study in particular are to examine individual differences observed in response to different diets by studying interactions between diet, genes, proteins, microbiome, metabolism, and other individual contextual factors, or things above the skin. Also, number two is to use AI to develop algorithms to predict individual responses to foods and dietary patterns. And third objective is to validate these algorithms for clinical application. So Aiming uses both top-down and bottom-up approaches iteratively. So when we say top-down or data-driven approaches, these involve hovering over data and searching for patterns that give insight to systems, structure, and function. This includes traditional statistical methods such as multivariate regressions, looking for correlations between variables and particular outcomes, and then using methods of visualizing data to help elucidate potential associations. So top-down
Hopefully we get Jessie back in a minute. I'll give her a few seconds to come back on. But if not, I'll jump in. And Alexis, are you controlling the slides?
No, Jessie is.
Okay. We might have. Hopefully she can jump in. Give her a minute. And Alexis, are you hosting if we, oh, there she goes.
Yes, I'm hosting.
Okay. I have the slide deck here, so I could bring it up if we don't get it back. All right. Let me try to jump in here. I think it was almost my turn anyway. Okay. All right, Alexis, you're hearing me fine? There's no
Yes.
delays? Great, okay. So I'll try to jump in where Jessie dropped off. She'd been summarizing this iterative approach of the aiming center, where we have folks working at different layers of data, taking these top-down approaches. And we are also focusing a lot and iterating using bottom-up systems approaches, where we draw on the literature, we get input from experts and different stakeholders about existing evidence base and other insights that we can draw on that to better understand these systems and identify drivers and outcomes of interest. And this process is guiding our data collection and data gathering, helping us identify where there may be gaps in data or gaps in our understanding, and working on developing appropriate metrics to understand these systems. And then we are utilizing approaches where we're mapping mechanisms and relationships. We're developing conceptual models like causal loop diagrams, but also then drawing on data and evidence base to develop mathematical representations of those systems. And a couple of the projects in the Aiming Center are developing sort of virtual simulation models of both humans and how they respond individually to food and different nutrients and dietary patterns, but also placing those agents into the world in which we live and modeling above the skin factors. So people's psychology, their everyday behaviors, the social networks, and the food environments that they live within, and the role that that plays in diet and diet adherence. Hey, Jessie, welcome back.
Hi, sorry about that.
That's all right. So I think I've wrapped up this slide.
Okay.
And just picked up where you left off, and it's actually my turn now. So I'll.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Kayla. Sorry about that,
worries.
everyone. My computer just crashed out of nowhere.
Thanks. So that's sort of our summary of the background to the Nutrition for Precision Health Consortium, the Aiming Center within that, and the role that we play. And then the Aiming Center is overseeing this RFA and this call for pilot proposals. And so what we're looking for in this RFA is proposals that are aligned with the objectives we just talked about for the NPH and for our center, and that use AI and other computer-aided approaches to do a range of things. So we have a really large scope of what the types of research that we're interested in. It might be research collecting novel data on nutrition and related health outcomes. It may be approaches to storing, managing, and transforming nutrition and other health-related data, identifying trends and associations and patterns and relationships in this type of data, developing and using new algorithms and representations that connect different food, drink, and nutrients with diet-related health outcomes, developing and using algorithms and representations that represent and predict different food and drink consumption behaviors, and so modeling human behavior and intake of foods, and also visualizing and communicating nutrition and health-related data and information, potentially to patients, potentially to healthcare providers, or to the research community. So those are just some examples, and on our webpage, where you have more detail about the RFA, there's some of these examples listed with some examples of existing research and papers that our team or others in the field have worked on that touches on some of these things. So some more concrete examples there. Okay, so I'll get into sort of the detail and technicality of the RFA. The deadline for full submission is October 12th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Eastern. We plan to notify people of the award as early as January 2024, and our anticipated start date for the projects is as early as February 2024. This cycle, we have funding for 2 projects. The projects can be up to $125,000 in total costs, so including direct and any institutional indirect costs per project. And this is funding for a 12-month project maximum. So it really is a pilot study. In terms of who can apply, it needs to be applicants working at institutions in the United States. The applications can come from PIs or researchers with diverse backgrounds in terms of academic and disciplinary backgrounds, but also different backgrounds in terms of their lived experience and perspective. And we're also open to funding pilot projects that are led by PIs or MPIs at different career levels. However, we are strongly encouraging folks who are in the early stages of their careers to apply, and also investigators who have backgrounds that are underrepresented in the scientific workforce. If you're not clear with what those definitions are, the NIH has some great material online in terms of how they define early career and how they define groups underrepresented in the workforce. Also, to be eligible, applicants cannot be currently named as an investigator on a current Nutrition for Precision Health award or center. And applicants must be affiliated with a university, agency, or research center that meets the same eligibility criteria to apply for NIH funding. We are funded by the NIH, and these pilot awards are funded through us via the NIH. And so it's meeting those same criteria for other NIH funding. And if you need more details, the NIH website provides it. I will leave time at the end for questions, so feel free to start putting them in the chat or making note, and then we'll open it up. In terms of the application process, you'll be asked to submit the full application by email, attaching all components that are required to one email and sending them to our aimings team. And in the subject line, you should list the aimings pilot program and the PI's last name, and send all of this by the October 12th deadline. In terms of what's required for the application, you'll find all of this information and material on our website, and the description of the RFA requirements and the forms. The things that you'll be sending in are the pilot submission form, which is a form template that you'll fill in some key information about the investigator and institution. You'll be asked to provide a lay-friendly abstract. So this is a short abstract of your project that is described in terms that is accessible to reviewers who may be across very different disciplines, from data science to public health to psychology, but also accessible to reviewers who may come from the community or patient groups who we often involve in the review process. The budget is a standard budget following NIH budget requirements. The budget justification is a standard NIH format, but should be 1 page in length. And you'll be asked to provide NIH format bio sketches for the key personnel using their standard 5-page template. You'll be asked to provide a summary of the resources and facilities at your institutions following standard NIH guidelines for this. If the project involves research with human subjects, meaning you're collecting data from human subjects, or you are using data that has been collected from human subjects, and even if it's a secondary analysis, that requires IRB and human subjects approvals, and the requirements for that that are standard for NIH applications will apply here. In terms of actually telling us what you're going to do and your project, that's the research strategy. Because this is a pilot project, we're just asking for a 5-page summary of this work, not including your references. and asking for the 4 key sort of topic areas that are standard in NIH applications, describing the significance of the work that you're doing, why it matters, and why it's likely to have an impact, the innovation of this work compared to what's been done in the past, describing the approach you're taking, the research questions that you're going to address, the methods and data that you're going to use to do that, and providing a description of the approach for your project, and then a short timeline describing how you will accomplish this over the sort of short 12-month pilot project. The last thing, if you do have co-investigators on your proposal that are at different institutions, that will be requiring sub-awards where you'll be subcontracting part of the award to them, then you also need to include the standard NIH requirements for subcontract forms that are listed here. Everything that you're submitting as part of the proposal should follow these formatting requirements. And like NIH, will be adhering to these requirements. So to be eligible to have your proposal reviewed, it needs to meet these the things that are listed here. So just to wrap this up and describe a little bit more, like once projects are funded, how they work with the NPH Consortium and with our aiming center. We're just in the 2nd year of this pilot program. So we have one project that is already up and running, a pilot project that's already up and running. And the way that you would work with this consortium, if the project is funded, is that first we would work to identify 1 or 2 mentors within the aimings center or our affiliates within NPH that could serve as a mentor to the pilot project that has expertise either that could supplement or support the work that the pilot project is doing. There will be different networking opportunities within the NPH consortium. There are 6 clinical centers within this consortium. I think something like 200 investigators across the US involved in this larger consortium. And so there's a lot going on, and there's within this consortium a working group that's just responsible for workforce development, and they're really creating opportunities to support either early stage investigators or folks coming into the consortium in developing their capacity to do this work and to make sure that they have the opportunity to network and draw on the consortium resources. We will ask the awardees to join our aimings video meetings on a recurring basis and be part of our center. And awardees will be expected to make an initial and then final presentation at the end of their award period to the wider NPH consortium. So I will stop with the slides there. And I think we're getting some questions in the chat. And I think we can open it up to questions that people have. If you want to raise your Zoom hand, you can take questions that way too. Through. So some of these have been answered in the chat. So the question about data assets that would be made available for projects to work on, I think that's a great question. And just to clarify, the NPH consortium as a whole started about a year and a half ago. They are collecting data from 10,000 American adults as part of the consortium, but that process has just started. And so we aren't anticipating having any data really available for analysis for another year or 2 probably. And so at this stage, the pilot projects should, as Jessie outlined in her response on the chat, have a plan for obtaining and using their data that they have access to or want to collect for their project. I see a question about, are small companies eligible to apply? If you're eligible to apply for NIH funding, then you're eligible to apply for this. I don't know if Jesse or Alexis, if you, I know we have a link to NIH eligibility. Are we able to
Yeah,
put that in the
I
chat?
can send that in the chat. Yeah.
Can we submit more than one application? Oh, and sorry, Jesse, I saw you. Yeah, you've got clarification about accepting from different types of organizations. And I think the main thing is just, is your organization set up and approved to be able to get federal National Institutes of Health research funding? And that can be specific to the organization. Can we submit more than one application? Did you guys answer that one, Jesse? But yeah, I don't see a response here. You're muted, Jesse.
I'll have to look into that question of ability to submit more than one application. And
Yeah, I think my understanding, and maybe we can send out an email to clarify to folks if this is wrong, is that you could only submit one application as the PI or multi-PI if you're submitting with another PI. But if you are involved in two applications as a co-investigator on one and a PI on another, then I think that's fine. So I think that's, I'm 95% sure that's correct. And I think if that is not, we can email everyone and let them know otherwise. In terms of graduate students, they are not eligible, nor are postdoctoral trainees, which is standard for this type of NIH funding. It's not a trainee grant. So unfortunately, it's not open to students and postdoctoral trainees, but if you, as PIs, so if there's someone else that you work with and they want to apply as PI and you could be a co-investigator, you're certainly welcome to be part of the projects that way. I see the question about, do the PI have to be early stage? No. Our first round, we funded a PI that was more mid-career. We are very open to proposals from investigators and PIs at any stage of their career, but we're just strongly encouraging and would like to support early career investigators. And so we just want to make that statement and encourage those folks to apply, but that will not be part of the decision criteria or eligibility criteria. And then I saw a question about how do we, part of the same question is how do you define early stage investigator? Alexis or Jesse, would you be able to post that too? I think basically if you Google National Institutes of Health early stage investigator, it'll give you a web page of how that's defined, and it's based on the number of years since your terminal degree. And it does account for things like if you've taken time out for family or leave or other things, they factor that in. And also has to do with if you've had major grants from federal institutions. So postdoctoral researchers, no. Postdoctoral associates, no, not as PI. Can we have a subcontract to a Canadian university? You got that one, Jesse?
sorry, which question?
The question about, so the PI is based at a US-based university, but could we subcontract to a collaborator at a Canadian university? So I think I see your response there. Yep.
Yeah, so foreign subs are allowed, but it should be fully described and justified in a description. And so it really shouldn't just be the USPI acting as like a pass-through for the sub, but yeah.
Yeah, so that might look like really making the case that the person with the expertise in this area that you have a track record of working with is based at this foreign institution. And there's not an equivalent person to work with in the US that has those same skills and expertise and work history with you. And so that would be something that you could put in a justification for a sub award. Katie is asking how often the Aimings video meetings are and what's the expected time commitment. I'm glad you asked that, Katie, because I think we don't want to give you the impression that you have to come to a 1-hour meeting every week as part of this pilot project. Jesse, my sense is like they would be invited maybe quarterly, monthly at the very most, to a 1-hour video call as part of aimings or the larger consortium.
Yeah, I think that's right, Kayla. Quarterly or monthly at most.
Yeah, okay. And then a question from Lauren, can there be multiple or co-PIs or just one PI? We can have multi-PIs or co-PIs. That is acceptable. Jesse, you're in agreement, right?
Yes, I believe so. But we'll make sure to update the FAQ and post it to the website with these questions. So I guess we should encourage everyone to check back on the website for the FAQ with posted answers to these questions as well.
Okay. So that's another one where I'm feeling 95%, even 99% correct that one's right. But we can, we'll when we share back the video call notes, we'll point you to the FAQ page where you can double check. Jimmy's asking about the role and scope of the mentor from aiming. So this will depend on the investigator and your project. So for someone that's really early career and maybe is very new to working in nutrition or very new to working in data science, you know, this might be something a bit larger in scope, or we try to find like a more senior mentor that has a very complementary set of skill sets that is, you know, tailored to the project. And they could serve as both like a person that they would meet with, you know, monthly or quarterly, or be part of the project that could provide additional guidance or connections to people within the NPH consortium on scientific topics or on career development topics. For folks that are more mid or late career, this mentor might serve more as like a complementary scientific advisor. So again, we try to find someone that really complements the PI's skill set and co-investigator skill set, and that could be you know, someone who's a conduit to the larger NPH consortium that could provide some complementary insight in different domains and connect folks up with the larger consortium resources. Rob is asking if the project can be based on data from outside the US. Yes. Our current funded pilot project is based in the US and is drawing on a data set from Europe in the work that they're doing. So it is, yeah, I think maybe the one thing to consider about this is the NPH consortium as a whole's mission is to advance science of precision nutrition. They are doing that by studying a large cohort of American adults, and it's funded by an American federal agency. And so the research should be relevant to the US context. But there's a lot of ways in which you could draw on nutrition or other types of data that may come from other places that would still be relevant or generate insight that is relevant to the NPH and to the work it's doing in the US. So that might be something to think about, Rob. I see a question from Andy. We're experts in computer science and AI. If we propose to work with nutrition scientists but don't know any, will you help us establish connections? Jesse, what's our stance on this? I know we can't do too much matchmaking and like helping people put their projects together, but probably the NPH website is a really great place to start and start connecting with folks.
Yeah, I would agree, Kayla. I think we're really supposed to just comment on if things are eligible or not, if application, and not so much on connecting or commenting on the, you know, the content of the proposal.
Yeah. But I think, Andy, if you look at the RFA and the slides that we'll send around, you'll see these key publications that are coming out on precision nutrition. you'll see on the NPH website the list of clinical centers and who's involved, and there's 200 folks working in nutrition and precision nutrition there. And they're all aware of this pilot program and are supportive of it. And so if you identify someone there that feels like a good fit for the specific work you're doing, they, and just say you're interested in this pilot program, you've connected with Aimings, they should be able to guide you through the network of folks that might be the right fit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Can a research scientist position apply? Nam is asking about this. I think this is institution specific. So if your institution, if you're in a research scientist position, which I currently am, and your institution has deemed your position eligible to apply for NIH or federal funding as a PI, then I think that makes you eligible to apply for NIH funding and get this pilot award. But I know this differs institution to institution. So Jesse, maybe we could put this one on the list of like FAQs and different roles. And if we have any other particular stance on research scientists, but I think at that stage, if you are not in a postdoctoral or training position, it's up to your institution as to whether they deem you eligible to get to be PI on a federal grant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Is the budget table the standard NIH SF 424? Yes. John, that one's for you. Shridevi is asking, are pre-existing collaborators frowned upon? In other words, is there an emphasis on newly established collaborations that are across disciplines for this call? No, if you have collaborators that you have a great track record working with, I think that would be viewed as a strength and evidence that this team could be productive together. So we don't have an emphasis on necessarily new teams, but you did see one of the criteria is around innovation. And so there is a criteria around like doing innovative work and new work, even if it's with a team that you've been working with across the call. We don't explicitly call out the need for like cross-disciplinary members of your team, but the NPH consortium and the Aimings consortium is inherently very interdisciplinary team science. I'm trained as a psychologist. Dr. Lee is an MD and a systems modeler. Other folks, key folks on the team are experts in AI and data science. There's trained nutritionists and registered dietitians as part of the NPH consortium. So this is very interdisciplinary work, and nutrition science and public health nutrition is a very complex field, which is why we're doing all this work in the first place. And so yeah, I would encourage you, if you can, work across interdisciplinary collaborations. That's very likely to add to strengthen the work of the team if that can be done.
I see a question. Do you have to be part of round 1 grant in order to be eligible for round 2? No, you do not. So new applicants are welcome for round 2.
I also got one question from Constantina. Can we comment on the type of data that could be used? So could it be EHR data that studies impacts of nutrition care? It's really up to you. We're really open to, if there's large data sets like electronic health record data or other large nutrition studies like NHANES in the United States. If there's existing large data sets that you want to draw on for an innovative research question, we're really open to that. And equally, we're open to studies that might look to collect their own data, but that can be quite hard to do in a pilot study with this amount of funding. And so it's common that the applications we get are using secondary data sources for this work. There's a good question here about the expected outcomes of the pilot project. Would it be things like publishing results or software tools that would be open source? Because this is funded by the National Institutes of Health, their markers for successful outcomes on projects applies here. So the translation of science that's expected is through like kind of formal dissemination of research results that includes conference presentations, published or peer-reviewed papers, be that in conference proceedings if you're in data science, or in more traditional journals, which is much more common in the medical community. So that is expected, that there is that sort of peer-reviewed work coming out of the pilot project. And then we're also really supportive of other types of translation that could happen from this work. So if there are software tools or algorithms that are developed that could be utilized by the larger NPH consortium as we get more data, that would be viewed as really exciting type of translation. Maybe on the other end of the scale, like translation to community partners or policy impacts would be exciting as well. So we would consider all of those things as successful outcomes, but keeping in mind that getting peer-reviewed results of this work out is a key criteria.
I see there's another question. Are there restrictions to participant characteristics if this study is a clinical research study? So for example, a specific age group. So I would answer no, there are no restrictions to participant characteristics. And in fact, we kind of are looking broadly across age groups and different characteristics. I would encourage that. Yeah.
I think the only thing I would add is, for a number of reasons, the NPH consortium is focused on adults, and there's not currently a planned pediatric study. And so strategically, I think it would be a better fit for the pilot projects to not be exclusively focused on child populations, because it's not as aligned with the larger consortium work. But if there was work that involved data on children and families and was relevant to life trajectories or adults, maybe you could make the case for that. But just thinking about keeping in mind that the larger NPH consortium is adult focused and intentionally trying to recruit a very diverse adult population. But a sole focus on pediatrics or children might not be the right fit. It would be harder to sell, I would say.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Did you see anything else there, Jesse?
Yeah, there's one. Do you have particular health outcomes that we're focused on?
Did you want to take a pass at that? I know you guys are working on some of that right now.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation about this recently with the broader consortium about what health outcomes of interest. So what is the goal of precision health, or what are we aiming for? And that conversation was very broad, and people emphasize the health and well-being aspect and not just focusing on disease or preventing disease. I think but the NIH has certain strategic priorities around health outcomes related to nutrition that I think are at the top of our list. So things like obesity, cardiovascular disease. I think there's a list of about 8 or so nutrition-related health outcomes in the NIH strategic plan that you can check there. But it is pretty broad.
Yeah, I think that's right. And maybe one of the coolest things about this NPH consortium is that it's funded by the Common Core, not by a specific institute that's disease focused. And so it's kind of unique that all of this work has been not with a very primary focal disease outcome like diabetes or like heart disease. but instead all these institutes where diet is relevant to their outcomes. That includes cancer, it includes mental health, it includes health disparities. All those institutes have kind of a stake in this because diet and nutrition matter to the work that they do. And so that's one of the reasons why it's been pretty broad.
Mhm.
Any other questions? People can feel free to jump in verbally. Okay.
Yeah, I just would, before we end, I would just encourage everyone to check back for the FAQ, and I think we can probably send out emails to those registered for the Zoom to let you know when the new FAQ is posted with answers to the questions that came up today.
Great. Thanks, Jesse. And so, yeah, we're really excited that there's so many folks that were interested in this and joined the call. We hope that this has been helpful. The webpage, if you haven't visited it, is really got great resources and a lot of already existing FAQs and answers to those questions, examples of some of the science that's happening around these topics. So I'd encourage people to really have a look through that as you're preparing your proposals. And we hope to get responses from many of you and applications from many of you. And we'll be continuing, and we have funding to do these pilot programs over the coming 4 years. And so this is not going to be the only opportunity. So if you submit something now and get some feedback, but it doesn't quite get funded, there's opportunities in the coming years. Salma, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. I submitted last year, but I didn't receive feedback. So I'm just curious, how many applications are going to be funded this round?
Last year, we only had funding for 1 project, and this year we have funding for 2.
Okay, and if we apply this time and we don't get it, are we going to receive feedback this time around?
Thank you for mentioning that, because I think I have misspoke. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, but we got a lot of applications, and actually we don't have the capacity to send feedback other than, it was just the, did we send the scores back to folks last year?
No, I didn't
No.
get scores, no.
Yeah.
I
No,
was
sorry.
yeah, we're not able to provide feedback on the individual proposals just due to the volume of questions and applications that are coming in, and the amount of people on our team.
Yeah, so I know that's not, I know that's difficult, Simon. I wish we could provide more, but unfortunately we don't have the capacity.
okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Elma. Okay, I think if there's no other questions, we can probably wrap up a little bit early. Thank you everyone again for attending, and please look out for that FAQ on the website from us.
Thank you.